Hi lovelies! Today we'll be going over how I personally start my human anatomy. So to start off, let's start off with the head. So we're going to start off with a somewhat decent circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be somewhat okay to start with. You want to really focus on just getting the gist of a circle. And then what we're going to do is going to add the cheeks at the sides of the face. Actually, what I should have done is add where I want the head to be looking. There we are, now we're focused. And then I kind of make sure the two sides are even as much as I can. And then I pick a point for the chin to be, and then I connect these two lines, and we have a basic head. Now for the neck, it's more of a swoop and swoop. With the human body, there's not really a lot of straight lines. You want more curvy and swoopy lines. You want to keep your hands pretty loose, and to help with this, you can actually like draw little doodles before you start, like a simple eye, or nom. Just kind of keep it loose. And you can also, from like really light with your pencil to darker and darker and darker and darker. This also helps with shading. But for right now, let's go back to this front head. And I'll talk about like facial features later. But now I'm just gonna add them in, and you kind of wanna, with the head, you just kind of wanna follow your guidelines here. If we could stay focused and just kind of map it out a little bit. Yeah, we'll do some shading, and then we'll make a line for the eyes, but we're not gonna worry about that too much. And then for the 3/4, it's basically all starts out with the circle again, except this one gets a little different because you're gonna start out where you want them to be looking. Now I do struggle a little bit with 3/4. Actually, I'm gonna round that out. For what I do is I kind of start out this same almost, and then I'll add in where I want my eye to be, and then I'll play around with it until I'm happy. And you kind of want to go like not all the way, but not too close. If you go too close, you're gonna have like a squished face, but if you're too far, you're gonna look wonky. So about right there, I want to say like double of whatever this is. But yeah, and then you're just kind of, you really want to go around and fix it. And then I like to add a little bit more head to the back here before I add the neck. And then if you follow the guideline where you're looking, you can also add a little nose. It helps me a lot with just like plotting. Now for the side, I do get slightly different. Again, with a circle. This time, instead of going like here for my guideline, we want to do it in the direction, oh, that's bad. We want to do it in the direction it's facing and try to keep this line straight. It's not going to stay straight, but right where your circle ends, you kind of want to start your nose. And again, kind of make that divot for the eye because it's not completely straight. And then just kind of hope and pray that you can make it work. But you definitely also want to, I go like that far, maybe. Just kind of play around with it until you're happy. Then you can add the rest of the skull. And then for this kind of neck, I do kind of the same thing. We'll go over this up here, back to the front head. For like the column of the throat, I do like to add these two lines. I prefer to do it in like the line work. Some people like to do it in shading, to each their own, honestly. And another way you can do this head, this is more like anime or something, but if you want to go for like a simpler head, you can do like a U and like some eyes. I'm doing this with one hand, so this is going to be a little off. And then I do like to do my noses on these as well because I think it's pretty cute. a little smile. And then for the hair, you can just kind of have it as simple or as, yeah. It's not the best one of like my more chibi people, but it gets the idea down. And yeah. And then let me see. All right, so we have the head down. It's basically a circle, plotting line, and depending on where you're going, you can see the cheeks for this one. I keep the side. You kind of want to be careful because if you go too far in, you're gonna get a very square chin. If that's what you're going for, totally go for it, but you also don't want to be too obtuse. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with a kind of a this thing, like a diamond with like your head up here. It's just kind of a lot of playing around and seeing what you like. And then let's go to the body next, actually. So I normally start with the head, but we're just gonna ghost that out. And then I'll do the neck. And then I'll do the shoulders up until like where the arms actually start. And then I'll concave that in, just kind of a little bit. For people who, for like women presenting characters, I'll give them a little bit of, oh, that's like really, I'll give them some, like a chest. And then I'll come back in and kind of keep it really loose and like curvy. Like, of course, this also works with chunkier characters. You just go the opposite way. And, or it's more of a, actually, it's more like a that, depending, because you also have to like consider the rib cage. But if you're going with like even chunkier characters, you just gotta like, it depends on what you're trying to go for. But for this one, I'm just gonna do a simple one. And then when you get about like where you want the hips to start, you actually want to curve them in, keeping in mind where the hip joints are. And then just kind of, so if you're following, if this person is like looking forward, you go all the way down. This, if you split the body in half, this is where you want about the ending of these lines to be. So I'm gonna curve that. And I'm only gonna do like one side of limbs. So normally for bodies, I'm gonna do this unproportional a little bit, but I like to get the three main joints and then like the hand, and then I'll connect them. And then what I'll do is kind of almost like rubber band it. Now this is not the best way to do, this is what I'm doing it. So what I normally do is have like this part of the arm over this part as just a little dimension thing. And then we're gonna keep with the curves. And then for the elbow, I go 3 lines, the connecting line to here and then back up. It just kind of creates a nice little elbow. You kind of want to keep that like on this side of the rubber band. And then kind of the same thing here. Just kind of want to, that's a pretty good arm. Yeah. And then we'll go over hands later, but I'll do like the beginnings of hand. And then for the leg, what I like to do is the same thing. Just kind of map that out real quick and then rubber band it. And then if you want to, for this, I'd like to just kind of have where the hips are. If you look at your body, your like your crotch region, it goes a little bit above your leg because your leg is attached to also the butt. So if you draw from this side, it's more or less like this is not the best. But if this is your like torso and this is the upper leg, it also just flows seamlessly into the backside of the body. Now for my legs personally, I like to add a little bit of the calf. It just helps it give it a more dimension. And then for the other side, I keep it pretty smooth. And I'll also go over feet later, but I do like to do maybe wedges and then a little bit planning for like the sole part of the shoe. So there is that. And then yeah, that's pretty much how I do my body. Now for more masculine presenting characters, I kind of do this is going to be really rough, but I do the same thing, but I keep it a little more boxy and I don't add the chest area, but I kind of keep it the same. And depending on like your character and what you're going for in your drawing, either one works. I've been trying to work on more body types because I tend to do a lot of like curvy individuals, but I've been trying to add more like masculine shapes into my artwork. But yeah, that's how I do the body, and I can go more in depth, but it's a lot of 1, 2, 3. And if you really look at this, between this, I keep them pretty much equidistant, because if you put your arm up and look at where, actually it's a little bit below, but I have it equal because that's just how my style turned out. But this should equal this distance wise for like these two lines. And then if we do like a simple straight arm, it's kind of the same thing that I do, except I kind of emphasize like this part of the arm, like right here, kind of where the joints meet. And then I recommend keeping these two about the same, like diameter, circumference. There we go, circumference. And then this a little lighter for the wrist. Of course, it depends on your character and whatnot, but I also want to go over how I do my hair. We'll just keep it with here. So how I do my hair is kind of, I kind of have a lot of angles in my hair, and hair is a lot of triangles. Now, we'll do soft triangles on this side and harder triangles on this side. It adds a lot of dimension to your character because this half looks very soft, very almost childish, almost kind of keep it fun, light, and this side is more what I use for my serious characters. And then ears are going to be a little different depending on how you want to do them. But how I mainly do ears is kind of like a half a heart, and then I'll give that little bump for like the cartilage just that attaches to your head, and then I'll go up to like create that shell and then create a little more depth. I'll do a second shell that's a little shorter than this shell. And then I'll go over like shading and how I color and clothing in a different video. But for right now, we'll just half shade it. We'll just rough it. But yeah, that's how I do my ear. You can always hide it with your hair, like I'm gonna do over here. Or you can just show the ear, like I'll do a quick little. Now for the ear, you kind of, okay, if you're doing hair behind the ear, I recommend showing a little bit of hair behind the ear. It just kind of helps to, you can either keep it close to the ear if you're sectioning off that piece of hair, or you can also leave it open if you're not. But for now, let's move on to the harder stuff in what makes human anatomy so interesting. Hands. So again, with that circle, and then what I like to do personally is add like the differentiation between the hand and the arm. And how I do that is I'm gonna actually sketch out a little bit of the arm down here, and then just kind of really close to the circle, but a little bit above it, I'm gonna add these two bumps. Now I'm gonna do this hand flat, but if you're doing this to the side, I normally have this little bump, because if you look at your hand, this part here is not completely flat. I'll try to battle my hoodie, but yeah, it's kind of it's very swoopy again, so we'll just sketch this out. And if you want to think about hands as a flat piece of paper that you're kind of toying with, am I actually gonna do that? Wait a minute. Yeah, that works. And then if you just want to dig, I recommend doing this exercise and then making the shapes. Yeah, but just kind of play around with the paper. And if you are having a hard time visualizing how you want your hands to look, I recommend taking a picture of your hands, how you want them, and then just kind of like looking. And don't be afraid to hide things. Like if I do this hand, you're not gonna see my pinky. My pinky is completely hidden. But yeah, and then I do my little trapezoid wedge thing. I try to keep where I want my index finger a little higher than where my pinky will go. And then for the thumb, it's a swoop, kind of a very swoopy curved line. And then I kind of do another swoopy, almost in a like a more than 90-degree angle or wherever you're having your thumb. But since this is flat, and then so this side is going to be very harsh, and then this side I keep pretty soft because I want to differentiate where the back of the thumb is and where the padding of the thumb is. So just go that, and then we'll keep it in the back. We'll kind of do this, and then if you want to imagine the fingers as cylinders for right now, and for the top of the thumb, I've been really enjoying like, or not the thumb, but like fingers, I've been really enjoying this for like if they're flat versus if they're like pointing, it's, yeah. And also if you exaggerate this curve, if you're doing like more cartoony styles, it also just like creates this very nice like movement in the art too. But we'll just, and then for like the space in between the fingers, you just kind of want to like swoop, swoop. You don't really want like straight lines or harsh lines in the hands a lot of the times, except for like a few places. But it just creates to help, and also if it fits your style or whatnot. But if you want to be more realistic, there's padding, as you can see, between my fingers because the palm of the hand is actually higher than the back of the hand, as you can see the webbing right there. And then for the pinky, we're just gonna actually do this really quick. It's not gonna be the best hand I've ever done, but that's okay. And then for the pinky, I like to add this little bit of a knuckle right here. And then also when I'm doing like side hands, I will add that knuckle just to give it some more dimension. And then, what did I want to talk about? And then there was something else. And then I recommend doing this with shading so it's a lot easier, but if you do like in between the joints, and if you take a peek at like where your bones are on your hand, it's not like right here, it's more or less right here, so you just kind of want to like bring that to a point. And I don't really do the thumb, if I'm going to be honest. And then, yeah, that's kind of like the gist of hands. And then they are difficult to learn, but I feel like if you have your own simple breakdowny way to do them, like for eyes, oop, there goes my pencil, but I can pretty much do, I'm not trying too hard right now, but a half decent eye. And we'll go over eyes, nose, and mouths in a little bit, including feet. I am still figuring out feet. Of course, art is always about learning and taking things you like and what you don't like from your pieces and using what you discovered about yourself and your art to progress along. But for now, let's get back into this. And then I don't really do fingernails because I haven't figured those out quite yet. But yeah. It's just kind of, hands are more of a trial and error situation to go through. Kind of the same with like feet. I do the same thing where I have like the outlines of like the ankle and I take it and I kind of go swoop for like the back of the heel, and then I just kind of keep it with it, and then I get the arch, and it's a lot of trial and error getting it exactly where you want it, and then I kind of go back, kind of like a nice swoop, like that thing. And then for the tops of the toes, I really like going a little bit over where I have that line and then connecting them down, just get a nice swoop. And then I also, where the circle is, once again, I like to add the ankle just to help define it. Now, this is not my best foot I've ever drawn, but that's okay. We're just getting the basics. And of course, this is just, I'm more focusing on what I'm doing in terms of the base instead of what I'm drawing. And I think all we have left is like facial features, I'm positive. Now, I do the same thing for like ears before I move on. I do the same thing whether it's front facing or sideways or 3/4. That is just a preference. And yeah, let's move on to eyes. So for eyes, I like to think of them as not like a flat line across the face, but more as like a curved line on the face. You want to think in either 3D and simple shapes. So if we take like a piece of paper or something and like curve it, that can also help. Now, the main 3 lines you're gonna see in eyes, I'm gonna focus real quick so I can make half decent eyes. Is there's gonna be a line here that connects the inner corners, and for these particular eyes, they also match up to the outer corners, but actually there's 3 or 4 lines because depending on where your outer corners are, they're also going to match up. And then the tops and the bottoms, and then 3 to 4 lines for like the eyes. And you want to, if you want to do half decent eyes that match, you want to take it one step at a time. And after you learn a little bit, just kind of gotta like, I would say that's half decent. It's not, it's the gist of the idea. And then you kind of also want to do that with the pupils. And then speaking of pupils, if you want like a dazed look, you definitely kind of want in the center because it doesn't have like a main focus. But if you want them focused, take them in slightly. If you're like focusing on the viewer or something, it helps to draw it in. Now for what I do with pupils, if I do another eye here, I kind of, I do follow that line for the iris. And then I kind of color it in. And then like I'll go over highlights probably next week. But for like the eyelids, you definitely want to add those in. I don't connect them because that's a personal preference. And then for eyebrows, depending on what, I can either like block it out, or if I'm feeling, I kind of like do a zigzag thing without picking up my pencil. It helps them look more full. It just kind of depends on what I'm feeling that day. And then I also really like to add, mostly with shading, is like eye bags. You can also do this with like really small and a few lines, just to like, if you want to do like eye bags in your line art. And then for like shading, we'll just go over this real quick. To create a highlight like right here, I'll also just like do that. And for eyelashes, I don't like drawing individual lashes, so I'll just do like an eyeliner type thing. And then sometimes you can add a tiny little inner corner. And then if you're doing like a more realistic eye, this still applies, but you also kind of want to add very, very closely to your original line is the waterline. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. I have quit doing this actually because I do like this style more. And then this kind of depends on eyes. I would recommend like watching shows and taking what you do or do not like. And now for my least favorite part, noses. I struggle with noses a lot. I've tried this method, have not figured it out, and that's okay. Actually, could I figure this out right here? It's not my favorite. But what I do is kind of like do a line and then loop back to create the nostril. I'll do that on the same side, try to match them decently. And of course, humans aren't perfectly symmetrical, so you can do either way. what I do is then kind of a line for like the tip of the nose, and then I'll highlight this a little bit darker and then this a little bit lighter. It's kind of like that. And then I'll add like the dip where your lips meet. Then I'll also shade that up a little bit. And then yeah. And then for like side noses and like 3/4, it's more of a swoop, swoop. And of course it depends on like what type of nose you're doing. I've been adding the nostril, but I don't know how it looks. Actually, let me try. See, I like that. With the nostril, I think it's better to go down, because if you go up, actually, it depends on the type of nose you're doing, now that I'm saying. Now that I'm seeing what the option, yeah, actually, I do like this. I do like these two. It just depends on what type you're doing. And then for mouths. Now, I don't do like your stereotypical mouth unless I'm doing like masky or something. But the way I do mouths is I have like a upside down curve, and then I follow it by 2 curves like that per smile. And then depending on if it's a frown or a smile, I go up or down with like my curves. Just kind of create that on the corner of your mouth, the little gap. And then what I'll do for like the bottom lip to insinuate is like add a little line right here and just shade that in slightly. And then of course you have this thing right here, so it kind of helps with like deciding stuff. And I do really like this because it's very fun. And then open mouths is just kind of the same thing of like down and up, and then I'll leave like a completely upward line, and then it's going to be a little off. But I really like to do fangs for all my characters because it's just fun. And then for teeth, I like to go a squiggly line, but not too squiggly, unless that's the vibe you're going for. And then for tongue, I just do a little mound. And then I'll do this, and then I'll also add like this split part. I gotta figure out how to do... I've actually quit the split in the tongue because I just don't like how it looks. And then we go back. Now for side mouths, it really depends on what you're going for. You can do the simple like anime mouth. I personally don't like this because it just doesn't fit with me, but I've been like square, like you can see a little triangle in this one. And then for the bottom, I gotta remember how to do this, but you could do like a circle. So it's kind of like this, and then you kind of like swoop, and then I've been connecting, and then yeah, this is the gist, and then I've been curving up and then following the nose. I don't like side mouths, but that's the basics of what you're doing. And then for the eyes, if you honestly want to take like, once again, like a piece of paper and then like draw eyes on them, you can actually help move them around to get the eyes you want, or you can just take a picture of like the pose you want to do. I feel like taking a picture would be the better option, but if you don't have access to a camera or video or something, I feel like this method could work. Am I missing anything? I don't think I'm missing anything. Next week, I want to go over like clothes because that's going to be a video by itself, and also just like how I shade. And I need to actually get better at shading because I forget where the light source is, and that's okay. And I'll also go over like highlights and stuff next week. But yeah, that is it. Thank you for watching, my lovelies. Go drink some water. Love ya.